What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have an Amanita Muscaria trip report for you. The title of this trip report is Proper Preparation and a Magical Night, and was submitted to Erowid in 2007 by the user, Glenn. With all that being said, let our story begin. I could incorporate endless poetry into this report about my feelings, about belief of why these mushrooms exist at the time of year they do, and the spiritual healing that followed after swallowing the mushrooms. But I will force myself, as best as I can, to only include the important things that most would like to read about in such a thing as an Amanita experience. As I am rather young in life, and have already loved deeply, and lost unfairly and horribly, and though my loneliness still affects me negatively, the Amanitas have been one of the many foods that have changed the way I perceive my life, and life itself. Life can be either a struggle or a challenge, and this is completely up to ourselves. Drink or eat or inhale whatever, if it helps you live the right way. It was the first half of fall, before the first frost, so all the flowers in my garden were bushy, and some were overgrown, in a pleasant sense. My largest brugmansia was still blooming in waves, though the cool, dry weather seemed to refrain any scent. This is the time of year that I live for. The birch trees were already dropping gold leaves, and some oaks and maples were beginning to show signs of turning to the red and oranges of the spectrum. I was less knowledgeable then. I thought the Amanitas only came up after the first frost, but the nice weather lured me into the woods for a few pleasant hours. I grabbed a backpack and walked to the end of my dead-end street, up the very wide, rocky trail, through the trails on a cliff of hemlocks next to a lake, and then down a long trail through the woods to the farm area. The trail forked right to a bumpy road. I walked the left fork and saw the end of the trail, revealing the beautiful farm. Right before the end of this trail was another trail on the left. I walked this one for half a mile to an old rock wall marking the property line of the farm, though on the other side of the wall wasn't a meadow, but what I believe to be an intentionally planted pine forest, at least a few acres, serving as a natural fence for the open part of the farm. Although there are many large pines throughout this thicket, the fact that some of the smaller trunks have nearly a foot of space between them, mostly planted in straight lines, and averaging 20-something feet tall, causes me to have doubts that this was a natural thicket of white pine. Not to mention that halfway through the thicket I cross a rock and dirt bridge over a stream, with lichen moss on the rocks. This bridge is wide enough to accommodate a horse and buggy, and the remnants of old trails of the same width, grown in with small, dead pines, riddled the thicket floor. I'm getting a warm, fuzzy feeling just writing about it. And for those of you in disbelief that the woods of the New England area could harbor such a place, I swear that this place is indeed real. I followed the trail almost to the end of the thicket, where you came out to one of the meadows, and entered a very small clearing, large enough for the grass to be growing, with 2 rocks set in the ground as lay-down seats. At the head of each rock was an eastern red cedar, one small and dead, the other about 15 feet tall and very, very green. I laid on the ground with my back against the rock under the living cedar and smoked the bowl of my burley tobacco. Though the pines were grown in, there was still a nice view above the clearing of the clouds in the sky, and I dreamed awake for a few moments. Moments like this make life so worthwhile, though most people my age not only wouldn't care, but would think doing such a thing is stupid or gay. I got the inspiration to walk along the edge of the pine forest, where the Amanitas have come up in previous years, and in satisfactory numbers. 20 feet southward from the clearing, I see a huge one on the east side of a larger trunk, matured to a flatter shape. 10 feet further south of this spot, I find a few more, younger and rounder. I was unsure to pick them or not because I had only eaten the scarlet or orange-red ones. These ones were mostly yellow, with some oranges toward the peak. I made a better choice when I decided to pick them. I got the large one, the flatter one, about 6 inches across, and 2 young ones about 3 or 4 inches each. Any other ones I saw were already more maggots than mushroom, although eating a few maggots doesn't have any possibility of doing harm. I ate them at night. I started the fire after dark, in my backyard, and used a thin pine branch as a cooking fork, which gave a unique flavor to the caps. I cooked them close enough over the flames to make them swell and sweat, but not burn them. I decided each cap was ready when they took on a leathery, almost scaled look. The flavor is very mystical, and excessive salivation is immediate. One might expect some cramps within 5 minutes after the first cap. I spend the first 2 hours sitting and daydreaming, or I walk around a bit to help digest the mushrooms quicker. I looked at the moon and thought. I walked in the starlit garden and admired the plants and forms. I tended the fire. I smoked my pipe and thought. I stared into the flames and thought. The beginning of the 3rd hour was when the magic began. I became the mushroom in an abstract sense. I was very horny, and though alone, I wasn't even capable of perceiving loneliness. I looked at the moon, I gazed at the stars, I thought about my life, somehow, in the most positive way I could remember doing. At one point, I turned on the outside light that lit up the garden from the front walls, around the 4th hour, and sat on the bench. When I thought a thought, I could hear it clearly in my head, repeated to me in a high-pitched voice that came out faster. This made me laugh. Luckily, the voice didn't repeat the laughter, or I would have laughed harder. And where, oh where would that ever end? I reflected at the journey to the pine woods. I had drifting images in my head of peeking under the pine trees and spotting these magical amanitas. And all this wisdom and knowledge of life and insight and everything grew in my mind like invasive vines. I was healed of many things that night, and it never wears off. It seems that since I benefit from the wisdom of the mushroom, then I have this natural desire to come back to them every year and reflect upon life once again. These mushrooms look the way they do for a reason, and that is to catch our attention because of the secrets they behold. They are large, round, plump, bulky, of beautiful colors, and, of course, have the distinctive white spots. I have found the bulb-shaped base of them, with the stalks bitten off like a deer ate them, and chunks with teeth marks in them, like a squirrel or chipmunk, had a stomach-full feast. It seems a natural desire to me, and with good reason as well, to partake of the Amanita.